In this video, we're gonna go and block out the main shape of the head, as well as very roughly bring out the main shapes and features of the face. Right, so now we got our scene ready from the last video. So let's get the cube, let's rename it. We shall call it head. So now with that renamed, go into edit mode and let's add a subdivision modifier. Now let's scale it down and let's drag it up here to where we think the head's gonna be. So let's drag this down over here, scale it down a bit more. So I'm now gonna go select the top vertices over here, drag it up to the top of the head. Now I'm gonna select everything and scale it a bit more on the x-axis. Now I'm gonna leave edit mode so I can apply the subdivision modifier, and I'm gonna add a new one, set these subdivisions to 3 levels. I will also enable the show on cage option over here that's shown by this little triangle. This will allow us to edit the resulting geometry of the modifier instead of editing the original geometry. So now let's select everything and let's scale it up so we're getting it nicely aligned with the edge of the head. So we can now edit all of these points in 3D space. Now I'm using this line here, as you can see, between the ears and the eyes as the center line of the head. So let's move this down over here. I also want to adjust the chin. So I'm gonna get this point over here and push it down. But I think actually this is the neck one. I'm going to push this one down. This is going to be the chin. As you can see, this is the forward vertex. So let's move this forward here. We're trying to imagine the shape of the head. So I'm trying to get this back point up here to get this cranial shape of the back of the head. Now to give you an idea of what I mean, I shall quickly and roughly sketch out these base shapes. So we're going to have the dome of the head. We're going to have the jaw. We're going to have the nose. And we're going to have the eye sockets. Now these are basically the main shapes I want to define in this video. So let's go over and adjust some of these points for now so we get that nice cranial dome over here for the base of the skull. Let's also adjust the chin of it. So let's pull this back up here and push this down. So now I also want to adjust the neck. So let's add a neck to this. So let's go to face selection over here. Select these faces. Press E to extrude it to about here. Now I'm going to disable the show on cage and also enter vertex mode. Now I'm going to scale it along the z-axis so it's nice and flat, and then extrude it once again. Now I'm going to select these edge vertices over here. So let's go to wireframe mode so we can see them better and scale it along the x-axis to about there. Now let's re-enable the show on cage and let's move these points in the neck around a bit. Actually, let's enable the X mirror so we can edit both sides at the same time. So let's adjust these points. And let's now have a look at some reference we can use. Now for reference, I'll be using this anatomical model I found on Sketchfab. You can find a link to this model below. Now with this model, we'll be looking for these main shapes. So what I'm looking for is the cranium, so the base of the skull, the jaw, as well as the neck, so the base of the neck. So these are the base shapes that we want to be looking for. So with this in mind, let's make some adjustments to the base shape of this blockout. Let's now make the final adjustments, just adjusting it to the concept, and with this neck in here, we can move on to the next step. Now in sculpt mode, let's increase the resolution of the subdivision modifier. And once we've done that, let's apply the modifier. Now we have this applied, we can start sketching onto the model our base shapes. So let's select the crease brush. Let's open our tool panel over here. Let's drag it out like so. And let's get our crease standard brush. Now with our crease standard brush, we can go and draw out all the highlights of the main features of the character. So for example, here we got the nose shape that we want to definitely draw out, the mouth as well, the eyes and the eye socket, as well as the jawline. We want to make sure we can clearly see the jawline. So these are some of the features that we want to start blocking out. Starting to get these rough shapes, we can be quite aggressive with this. We don't have to be precise. So let's just start pushing in and out all of these main shapes. Now if we rotate the camera, you can see that we don't have a very appealing face yet. What we do have are all the landmarks, so we can use these as a point of reference. Now I'm going to enable matte cap so we can see these better, and I'm going to select the basic glossy matte cap. Now matte caps are basically spherical textures that have been mapped to the screen space normals, which allows us to get a representation of a particular material. Hence the name matte cap coming from material captures. This allows us to identify the key shapes of the model. Now in this case, I'll be using my own matte cap, but feel free to use whatever matte cap you're most comfortable with. And let's now go and drag out some of these key features. So we're going to swap to the grab brush. We can use the G hotkey to quickly swap to our grab brush, and we're going to select the grab smooth brush. Now with this brush, I'm going to start pulling and pushing all of these key features into place. Now over here, I'm just going to line up the eyes here. So I'm going to push these back a bit and then align to that the corner of the mouth. Now for the lips themselves, I'm just going to make sure they have this kind of round shape to them as if the teeth are pushing them out a bit. And then for the nose here, we're going to line up the nostrils to where we have the tear ducts for the eyes. Let's now quickly swap back to our front view and adjust some of these proportions so they fit the concept that we have. Again, the concept is not going to be a blueprint for us, but at the start, we want to get as much of these proportions based on the concept. Now here in the side view, we want to get some of these proportions right as well. We can use our anatomy model as a reference. I'm going to get this jaw shape back into the character. We want to also respect the eye socket over here, and we want to maintain this dome of the skull. So here we have the teeth and we have the nose socket. We also want to bring out some other features such as like a cheekbone that we have over here. So these are some of the details that we want to pay attention to. So let's now swap to our crease brush and start drawing out some of these features. Now I'm going to select the flatten brush and I'm going to adjust some of these settings. So I'm going to increase the strength. I'm also going to increase the normal radius, which will increase the radius from which the normal will be sampled for the orientation of the brush. And then finally, we're going to adjust the fall off of the brush. So we're going to select sphere as the fall off. So now we have a harsh fall off for our brush. Now with this brush, we can start polishing up the surface of the jaw. Now let's get our grab brush and start pushing in all of these main shapes of the jaw. So over here with the cheeks, the jawline, and just pushing these in. And let's hold shift just to smooth out some of these parts. Now let's go into our front view over here. As you can see, we have lost a bit of the shape of the jaw over here. So let's go and fix that. So let's change our matte cap to the edge matte cap. Here we can see the edges better, and let's drag out the edge of the jaw to line up better with the concept. So now we have those base shapes back in. Let's set our matte cap back to what it was before, and let's now get our clay strips brush. And now with this brush, let's cut away some of this cheek over here. Let's now get our smooth brush. Let's reduce the strength of it a bit and let's start smoothing out the cheeks over here. Now let's go to front view again. As you can see, we have some of these key points that we still want to highlight. Some of these corners of the eyes, for example, these little parts that we want to identify a bit better. So let's swap to our grab brush and let's hit the G key several times so we can swap between the brushes until we get the grab pinch brush. Now with this brush, let's start pushing in these areas again, just highlighting all of these key features. Now while you go through this, just focus on the big shapes, ignore the smaller detail, just focus on the big shapes and look at your concept. Look at the distance and the proportions for the eyes, the nose, the mouth. Make sure you got all of these big shapes in place before we start creating details and defining the actual shape. So we just want to get the overall eyes, nose, mouth in the correct location. Right, so now with that done, let's go to the back of the head over here and let's get our crease brush and let's define a bit here the edge of the skull, as well as define a bit of the jaw over here. So now with our jaw nicely defined, let's start thinking about these ears that we have over here. So let's go to our side view, and here's where our root of the jaw is. So this is where our ear is going to be located. So let's swap to our clay strips brush, and let's have a look at the center of the eye. So if we look at the center of the eye and we draw a line over here, we have a point of reference for where the base of the ear is going to start. So let's start sculpting the ear, just using the clay strip brush to build up the rough shape of the ear. So adding layer by layer. And let's now go to the front view and let's swap to our grab brush, pressing G. And let's drag out the shape of the ear just so it fits the concept. We can now start pushing in as well the sides over here. So let's push these in just a smidge, just like so, just so we have nice ear shape. We can now get our crease brush and start pushing in these edges of the ear as well. We can hold shift just to smooth out some of these rougher edges over here, just so it's a bit easier to work with. And then swap back to our grab brush and start pushing these sections back into shape. Now again, we just want to focus on the overall shape, so we don't really care about detail. Just want to get the rough shape and the overall placement of these shapes right. So again, thinking about the concept, looking at my references, and just trying to get an approximate shape based on the concept. So now we have a rough block out of the face with all the landmarks fully in place. Let's now go to the next video where we're gonna go and sculpt out some of these key face elements such as the eyes, the nose, and the mouth.